The grand hall of the Valorian Empire stretched before James like a cathedral of crystalline architecture, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to judge him with every flicker. He stood at the center, boots planted firmly on the polished obsidian floor, while a dozen alien dignitaries watched from their elevated platforms. Princess Aliana descended the central staircase with the grace of someone who had never been told no in her 19 cycles of life. Her violet skin shimmered under the hall's ethereal light, and the crown of living metals that adorned her head whispered secrets in a language James couldn't understand. She was beautiful by any species standard, and she knew it. So, she said, her voice carrying the melodic quality of her people but laced with unmistakable condescension, "The Terran Federation sends us... this." She gestured at James with one elegant hand, her 3 fingers splaying in what he'd learned was the Valorian equivalent of a dismissive wave. James said nothing. He'd been briefed extensively about this moment. First contact with the Valorian Empire could mean new trade routes, shared technology, perhaps even an alliance against the Kreth swarms that threatened the outer colonies. Earth needed this. I expected someone impressive, Aliana continued, circling him slowly. Your species conquered faster than light travel only 3 centuries ago. You're practically infants stumbling through the cosmos. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. And yet you dared to request an audience with the Eternal Throne, to propose, what was it, partnership? The other Valorians murmured their amusement. James recognized Ambassador Kelthrix among them, the official who had initially seemed sympathetic to humanity's proposal. Even he looked away, unwilling to meet James's eyes. Your people live such brief lives, Aliana went on, stopping directly in front of him. She was taller, like all Valorians, and she made certain he had to look up to meet her gaze. A Valorian child of my age has studied stellar mechanics for longer than your entire diplomatic career. We were navigating galactic politics when your ancestors were banging rocks together in caves. James felt his jaw tighten. He'd spent 5 years preparing for this assignment, learned 17 alien languages, studied the intricate social hierarchies of 43 spacefaring civilizations. He'd left behind his family, his home, everything he'd ever known, for a chance to represent humanity among the stars. Tell me, human, Aliana leaned closer, her breath smelling of exotic spices. What could your primitive species possibly offer the Valorian Empire? Entertainment, perhaps. We do enjoy watching lesser beings attempt to grasp concepts beyond their capacity. The hall erupted in polite laughter. James recognized it for what it was, the cruel mirth of those who had never faced real adversity, who had been born into power and mistaken their fortune for superiority. Something inside him shifted, not broke, like tectonic plates finding a new configuration. He thought of Earth, not the sanitized version in the diplomatic files, but the real Earth, the planet that had survived ice ages and asteroid impacts, the species that had clawed its way up from the primordial soup through sheer, bloody-minded determination, humans who had split the atom, walked on their moon, and reached for the stars with nothing but mathematics and audacity. He thought of his grandmother, who had survived 3 wars and still planted flowers every spring, of Dr. Sarah Chen, who had cracked the FTL problem in a basement laboratory with equipment held together by duct tape and hope, of the colony ships full of families willing to sleep for decades in cryostasis, gambling everything on the dream of new worlds. Aliana was still talking, her voice dripping with aristocratic disdain. Perhaps we could keep you as a curiosity, a pet diplomat to parade before visitors. I'm sure you could learn to perform simple tricks given enough. James turned. It was a simple movement, a rotation of his body, a redirection of his attention. He didn't interrupt her, didn't issue a warning, didn't deliver some cutting retort or dramatic pronouncement. He simply turned away from the princess of the Valorian Empire as if she had ceased to exist. The silence that followed was absolute. James began walking toward the great doors through which he'd entered. His footsteps echoed in the shocked stillness. Every eye in the grand hall tracked his movement, but he looked at none of them. His back was straight, his pace measured and calm. How dare you? Aliana's voice cracked like a whip, the melodious quality fracturing into something shrill. I am Princess Aliana of the Eternal Throne. You will face me when I speak to you. You will, James, reach the doors. The massive portals, constructed from what the Valorians called starglass, began to iris open in response to his approach. He didn't pause, didn't look back. Aliana's composure was completely gone now. Stop him. This is a breach of protocol, an insult to the crown. He cannot simply, but James could, and he did. As he crossed the threshold, he heard the chaos erupting behind him, voices raised in confusion and outrage, the scrape of chairs as dignitaries stood, and beneath it all, a sound he hadn't expected, uncertain laughter, not mocking this time, but bewildered, perhaps even impressed. The doors sealed shut behind him with a whisper of compressed air. James continued down the corridor, his diplomatic attach case swinging lightly at his side. His ship, the Perseverance, waited in the orbital dock. The crew would be surprised to see him back so soon, but they wouldn't question his decision. They were human. They understood. Humanity had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, that sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect wasn't a clever comeback or a show of force. Sometimes it was simply walking away, demonstrating that your time, your dignity, your very presence, was a gift that could be withdrawn. The Valorians could keep their 1,000-year-old empire. Humanity would keep moving forward, building, exploring, surviving as they always had, not because they were superior, but because they refused to stop. As James boarded the transport that would take him to his ship, he allowed himself a small smile. Earth would be disappointed by the failed negotiation, but they would understand. And somewhere out there, among the trillion stars, there were species who judged others by their character rather than their age. Those were the partners. Worth finding. Behind him, in the grand hall, Princess Aliana stood frozen at the center of the chamber, staring at the doors through which the human had vanished. For the first time in her 19 cycles of life, someone had looked at her and found her wanting. And for the first time, she understood what her tutors had meant when they spoke of the humans' most dangerous quality. They didn't need anyone's permission to have dignity. They simply had it. The end.